Hello and welcome to this video and to June's book review. As I said at the end of last one, I wasn't sure how much reading I was going to get done, but actually we did okay, although I very much stuck to a romance theme unintentionally. But I did get married in June, so maybe there was a sort of subconscious romance thing happening in my brain. So although I did read 6 books this month, I didn't quite hit all of the points that I try to in a month, so that's a reread, a Kindle book and a non-fiction. I missed out on the non-fiction this month just because I ran out of time, basically. And to be honest, I'm probably going to have to scrap those little points anyway. We're due to be moving soon. This is probably the last book review in this spot with this bookcase, because all of these are going to have to go in storage for a while. My little to-be-read piles, oh it's not actually that little, it's quite big, but my to-be-read pile will come with us to our new place, and then eventually when we get a bigger property the rest of the books will come back in and we'll have it in front of a bookcase. But for now I don't know where and what we're going to be doing with reading and books and things, but certainly rereads and things won't be happening because I won't have anything to reread and all of that kind of stuff. But you don't really care about that kind of stuff, so let's get into the books that I actually read in June. So I started off the month with Beach Read by Emily Henry. She's an author I've always been intrigued by. I think I probably would have preferred to read Is It People We Meet on Vacation? Is that the title of the book? But Beach Read was 99p on the Kindle store, so I thought I would pick that up, and I read it pretty quickly. It wasn't really what I expected, to be honest. It was a romance, but I was expecting, certainly from the title, Beach Read, a sort of fluffy beach read. But there was a lot more to it than that. There was a lot more, I guess, darker elements to it, and it just wasn't quite what I was expecting. This follows two main characters whose names have completely passed me by because a lot have happened this month, but they are both authors struggling a bit with writer's block. They end up living next to each other in a beach town and then sort of challenging each other to write their style of fiction. So our female protagonist is a romance writer, our male protagonist, I guess we'd class them as like literary fiction, and they challenge each other to try and write in each other's style, and inevitably they fall in love, as would happen in all romance novels. This was pitched as a enemies to lovers. I probably wouldn't go that far, I'd probably go more rivals to lovers, and I prefer it that way because I think I've said this a number of times when we come to enemies to lovers books, but I never believed that the people are enemies, so rivals to lovers makes more sense to me and I prefer it that way. I would say the romance part of it is quite a slow burn. It takes quite a while for it to develop, which, is that what I wanted? I don't really know. I would say that this book didn't really have a wow factor to me. I enjoyed it, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed their sort of backwards and forwards with each other, their banter. That was a really good part of it and really well written by Emily Henry. But there was nothing in this book that made me go, oh my god, that's brilliant, that's so unique, blah 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 blah. So I probably will pick up some more from this author because I did enjoy the writing style. I just didn't find this one quite as spectacular as maybe I wanted, but then that maybe is a bit harsh. But there we go, that was Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I then hopped into my reread for the month, which was Ketchup Clouds by Annabel. If you've been watching these videos for a little while, you know I've read both My Sister Lives on the Mantelpiece and Silence as Goldfish by this author in the last few months and haven't really enjoyed them, whereas Ketchup Clouds is by far my favourite. Where the others got sort of like a 3-star rating from me, this one was a good 4.5, and definitely for me Annabel Pitcher's best work. I think that's partly because of how it's told. So we're following Zoe, who is writing to someone on death row in America. She's writing them letters telling them the story of her and 2 brothers, and we find out a lot through those letters. And I think because she's writing to an adult, that makes it, as an adult reading it, a better reading experience, if that makes sense. I just think it makes it easier to connect with the story and what's going on, despite the fact that, you know, I'm no longer a teenager. I'd say this book had a lot of tension, which I enjoyed. It was sort of a romance come thriller but not a thriller. It's hard to explain what the genre of the story is, but definitely one I enjoyed and could see it being sort of like a soap opera. I could see this being a storyline on, you know, EastEnders or something, which may or may not be to people's taste. But compared to the other two books, which have now left my collection, this one will stay because I really, really enjoyed it and can see me enjoying it each time I read it. So that was Ketchup Clowns by Annabel Pitcher. So I then went back to my Kindle because it was around the time of my wedding. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up above for you in the iCloud because I'm going to keep promoting it because I like it. So I thought, why not read a romance, obviously, while I'm getting married, with the name of the month in the title. So I read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Now, this isn't a sweet pull on your heartstrings kind of romance, which I probably would have preferred at the time I was reading it, but that doesn't say that it isn't a good book and a good story, because it is. Again, I can't remember the characters' names, but we're following, again, two authors. I don't know why that was a theme as well this month. Two authors who met a long time ago when they were teenagers and had a romance there, and then they meet up again, sort of accidentally, I guess, several years later, and they have a week in June to explore those feelings again, is a way of putting it. Our main female protagonist has an illness which affects her in sort of day to day. She can have like massive headaches and things which are really debilitating, and it does just explore some deeper themes of self-harm, some themes of neglect, that kind of thing. So I would check trigger warnings if just in case there are things in there that you might not want to read about. In all, it was quite an intense book, but saying that, the bits I enjoyed most was more the relationship between our main female protagonist and her daughter, and I would have liked to have learnt more about the generations above. So they talk a lot about the mum of our main female protagonist, and then the grandma and the great-grandma, and I would have liked to have heard a bit more about those because they sounded like really interesting women, and like there was a good story there as well. I did find that the ending was a bit rushed though, which was a disappointment. I was enjoying the story throughout, and then it was a bit like, oh, there we go, we're done now, and it was a bit, I would have wanted it to have developed the ending a bit more. But on the whole, I enjoyed the novel. Again, maybe not the right time to read it for me, but nonetheless did enjoy it anyway, and that was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. The next one I read was A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sara Barnard, and this so far is my favourite book of the year. I don't give out 5 stars very often, so this is the first one that I've given this year, and quite honestly I don't think it's the best written book there is, but there was something about the main character in this that I really, really connected to. So this follows Steffi, who has selective mutism, and you know, a whole heap of anxiety and incredibly introverted and all of that kind of thing. And we're following her as she's starting sixth form, so about 17, and her first flurries of love with Reese, who happens to be deaf, so they do a lot of communicating through British Sign Language, which I found very interesting and very well portrayed in this, and has yet again, because it's a thought I've had many a times, made me kind of want to learn British Sign Language, but if that'll happen, I don't know. So even though I'm like a lot older than Steffi, I could so see me as a 17-year-old or slightly younger in what she was saying and in some of her introverted ways. Obviously she was a bit more extreme than I was, but I've always been quite a shy person, and certainly when you meet me I'm not that open and forthcoming to begin with, just because I get in my head a lot with new people and things like that. So a lot of what she was saying in it were close to home, I guess. And then obviously she's amazed that she's managed to get her first boyfriend and things like that, and I'd read it just after the wedding. We're going to mention it a lot, it was a big thing this month. And I remember those feelings when I got my first boyfriend, and just, I think the time of my life that I read it just made me want to like squeeze her and be like, trust me, it gets really good. Life gets really good. Don't worry about it. You'll be perfectly fine. You'll find that person. So as I said, I'm not sure it's the most well written and well represented of books. Obviously I'm not Own Voices. I can't comment on whether the deaf community or the selective mutism community would say this is a good representation or not. But I found it really sweet. I really enjoyed Steffi and Reese's romance and how that developed, and I liked the awkwardness of it and the fact that it felt natural and not rushed and that kind of thing. And I think it handled the disabilities respectfully and certainly gave me some insights into it. But as I say, I think this is more a time of life that I was reading it rather than the book itself, but that's not to detract from it at all. I really, really enjoyed it, and that was A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sara Barnard. So to continue my romance theme, I then went on to Billy and Me by Giovanna Fletcher. This was her first novel, so her debut. I'm reading them not in order because I've read a few others. And I would say you could tell her writing definitely has got better. And this one follows Sophie, who has a bit of a traumatic event in her teen years, which has then meant that she remains in her small town and is comfortable there and works in a cafe there until Billy, who is a superstar, an actor, comes to film Pride and Prejudice in her little town, and then a romance ensues, and she then has to deal with what it's like dating a famous person and having fame thrust upon you when you weren't wanting it and things like that. And that aspect of this book I really enjoyed. I feel like Giovanna probably took on some influence of her own life, what with her husband being Tom Fletcher of McFly, so she would know what it's like to be the partner of the really famous person, because of I believe, I may be entirely wrong, but her relative fame has come at a later stage rather than them being at the same fame level at the same time. So it was interesting to read about a normal person and their experience of dating a famous person and how they deal with the media and all of that kind of thing. But I would say it was kind of predictable. It followed exactly what I was expecting it to do. Because of that, you don't get as much of the feels, I guess, in it, because you know where it's going. I think the main part for me, and it seems to be the case with all books, that although I enjoy them, the bits that I enjoy most aren't the main part. So for me in this one, the relationship between Sophie and Molly, who is the owner of the cafe that she works in, is my favourite part of it. And Sophie is also a massive overthinker, and as I've mentioned, so am I, so it was nice to see that portrayed in a novel. I don't think that happens, well, it happens more often, but this felt natural and a bit like my brain at points. Having read books from Giovanna that are published after this one, I can definitely see progression in her writing. The story was entertaining though, and there were definitely parts of it that I really enjoyed. So yeah, if you're interested, obviously worth giving a go. So that was Billy and Me by Giovanna Fletcher. And then the last book I read was The Bride Test by Helen Hoang. This is, I guess, a companion novel to The Kiss Quotient, and this time we're following the cousin of, is it Michael in the first book? So Kai in this one, and his mum has essentially brought back a woman from Vietnam for him to marry, or at least for her to attempt to get him to a place where he's happy to marry her, because he feels that he's got no emotions and no love. Being autistic, that is not something that he feels he can do, and that he's got a heart of stone. It's mentioned quite a lot in the book, the whole heart of stone thing, which slightly irritated me at points. I went into this one having read The Kiss Quotient knowing that there was going to be a lot of smut, so it didn't surprise me quite as much, but my word, there's a lot of erection chat in this book. But that being said, it again is quite a slow burn romance, and the sexual tension and things like that is written really well, other than the fact that there are so many mentions of erections. Who knew there were so many ways of talking about it? And it was nice to see that the characters, or the main characters of the Kiss Quotient, do appear in this one, even though they're not overly integral to the plot of this book. It's been a while since I've read the Kiss Quotient, so I can't say which one I preferred. There were elements of this that did frustrate me. Again, I think I've said it with books before, but if they just learned to communicate with each other better, then half the stuff in this book wouldn't be a problem. But that being said, like, they have a matter of what, like 2 months, 3 months to actually get to know each other. It's all well and good me saying, oh, just communicate more, when I've been with Pete for 10 years, so we've learnt how to do that. We probably wouldn't have been able to do that within 3 months, if that makes sense. I like the look of the different societies, the Vietnamese society, and then coming to America as an immigrant and things like that. So yeah, if you're looking for smut, I would definitely give these books a go. So that was The Bright Test by Helen Hoang. And that was the last book that I read in June. As I mentioned, surprised how much I got through, to be honest, but they were all romances, and romances tend to be quicker reads for me than some other genres. Again, as I mentioned, don't know what's going to happen for the rest of the year. Certainly July is going to be another hectic month with us moving, but we'll see what we can get read, and hopefully I'll have some sort of book review for you in August for July, but where that will be filmed will be something we can find out together next month. But if you've enjoyed this one, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!